Coaches across the country used the Coachpad this past season to be more efficient with their scout card prep on the weekends as well as when out on the practice field working with their scout teams. Whether you're a coach using a computer program to create cards or drawing them by hand, the Coachpad is for you. Never printing paper or stuffing a binder, clearly seeing scout cards outdoors in the bright sun, and using the coach pad on game days, syncing diagrams from the press box to the sideline were some of the features coaches enjoyed this season. This offseason, get your coach pad at thecoachpad.com to get your program ready for next season. Thecoachpad.com. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Um, like, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz. Check out our sponsor, Coachpad. Today we have longtime college coach Jeff Mullen. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Appreciate you having us on.
No problem. No problem. Obviously, you mentioned the weather was really nice down there as we were kind of, at least the skies were really nice, a little cold, but it's nice down there in North Carolina. You've spent over 20 years coaching college football. How do you end up where you are today?
Grace of God, be honest with you, graduated high school like most young men and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and good enough to get into a Division III school for football, and that experience led me into coaching. Surrounded by good men the whole way, high school coaches and college coaches. Able to get my first high school. I got a high school job right there in Columbus, Ohio, as a matter of fact, in would have been the fall of 1990. And then the very next year, my college coach called me and said, there's a graduate assistant job open at the University of Hawaii. Would you like to go? And it took me all of about 5 seconds to say, I'm in. And so we went out there for a year and came back, got another GA job through my college playing days at Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio. Got a job at Ohio University as a GA, and then that staff got let go, and another grace of God moment, Jim Grobe got hired and decided to bring me aboard, and I held on to him as long as I could.
um, who was the head coach at Wittenberg when you were there?
His name was Ron Murphy. We were actually in the Ohio Athletic Conference prior to their move to the NCAC. And Ron Murphy, the head coach at the University of Hawaii, was a guy by the name of Bob Wagner at the time. And Bob Wagner graduated from Wittenberg as an All-American offensive lineman. And just, again, by the good Lord's grace, he called Coach Murph one day and said, I need a GA, and I want to hire a Wittenberg kid. And, I was the first person that came to Coach Murphy's mind. And, next thing you know, you're on a plane out west.
And up to that, correct me if I'm wrong, up to that point, Hawaii had not had the success it has had recently. But they were starting to do some things because it wasn't like Paul Johnson and a couple other like the flexbone guys on that staff.
Yep, that's I often share with people that's where I cut my teeth. I literally sat in the back of the room getting coffee for everybody, but was smart enough to at least take notes. But Paul Johnson was the offensive coordinator. Jeff Monken, the head coach at Army, was a graduate assistant on staff. Kenny Niumatalolo, the head coach at Navy for years, who I think now is coaching with Chip Kelly at UCLA. Yeah, Kenny is Niumat was a GA on staff. Kid by the name of Ivan Jasper was our quarterback, who is the OC at Navy now. And Mike Seawalk, he had Georgia Southern, all those flexbone teams as well, was the O-line coach. And the connection to my full-time gig was when I was a GA at Ohio University, and that the old staff that hired me there got fired. The new head coach that came in was Jim Grobe, and Grobe was an Air Force guy. His first hire was Mike Seawalk from Hawaii to be his offensive coordinator. And then when Mike walked in the building in Athens, Ohio, and saw my narrow butt sitting in the corner, he goes, hey, I know that kid. He could be my B-backs coach. And that's how it basically happened. I became the 9th hire at Ohio University in, I guess, 1995. And I coached the dog out of the midline and inside veer track, and every every day had to answer the question from our fullback, why is nobody blocking the 3 technique or the 5 technique, and I'm not getting the ball and getting smoked. So I was the cheerleader coach for a couple years, and like I said, Jim Grobe's my guy. I recognized very quickly that he was the kind of human being I wanted to learn the game from. The coaches he surrounded himself with were the kind of human beings I wanted my wife and kids to grow up with. And so I never once looked for another job. I just held on, and we were lucky enough to win games at Ohio University, get that thing kind of rolling. And Groby got hired at Wake Forest in 2000, and next thing you know, I'm an assistant coach in the Athletic Coast Conference. Just the dumb old kid from Lima, Ohio.
Okay, and we'll come back to Jim Grobe because I have a tremendous amount of, at least from an outside looking in, for Jim Grobe and kind of how he runs an organization. And like obviously, I think most of college athletics does as well. But like that I mean, you kind of mentioned how loaded that Hawaii staff was. I mean, half that staff spent time with either at Georgia Tech or at Navy
Correct.
for well, essentially 3 decades. Kind of what were you able to pull from Paul Johnson and Mike Seawalk? I mean, over the course of that time at both OU and at Hawaii. I mean, obviously the flex bone is a very interesting, and triple is a very interesting system. I mean, I hate saying just triple because it's not just a triple, as you kind of mentioned already. Midlines in there. There's a bunch of stuff in there. So, kind of, I mean, what were you able to pull both just offensively and just philosophically from that experience?
Yeah, and the other two humans that I want to mention on that tree at Ohio University, Troy Calhoun was hired with Jim Grobe, who, of course, now is the head coach at Air Force, and Steve Labotsky, who is the OC at Air Force, coaching the O line, who ultimately became our offensive coordinator at Wake Forest for a few years. So Paul Johnson, Mike Seawalk, Troy Calhoun, Steve Labotsky, those 4 human beings really made a huge impression on me in so many ways. I'll sum it up from a schematic standpoint, which I'm sure your audience is most curious about because they're great men. But the 2 things that I learned were the numbers, angles, grass philosophy. Option football is all about calling the play and then the quarterback getting it to the right side of the line of scrimmage based on first the numerical advantage, and then the angles for the offensive lineman. And certainly then, if all things being equal, you want to take it to the field and run it at the grass. That always was a concept that Troy Calhoun was able to evolve from the flexbone days into more traditional offense at Wake Forest, regardless of play call. That led to the birth of the second thing that kind of blew up in my head, which was how to identify defense in the triangle that we talk often about here at the Big O system. In understanding how to, not only offensively make sure you're working the numbers and the angles, but also how to appropriately identify defense on any system. I think the majority of coaches are in the traditional football sense, right? We're all 10, 11, 12p. We're all doing things that we see on TV. The flex bone midline guys are purists. They'll never change. And I love that about them. I love that okay, I understand that 4 verts are really good, but we're not going to be good at it because we're going to be great at this, right? Midline, inside veer. And I take that all the way to people I've never worked with. And man, would I'd love to have had the opportunity, those air raid guys, the Hal Mummy staff, the Lincoln Rileys, and all those, Dana Holgersons and all those really smart human beings that were trained under the throw philosophy. But the thing the 2 had in common with they were systems, right? So the air raid guys, they're going to be terrible at running gap plays, right? But boy, can they're really good at the Y cross. So I looked at both of them, and although they're extremely different, they have the exact same commonality of being a system. And so through guys like Troy Calhoun at Wake, um, I was able to kind of evolve that understanding. And then ultimately, when we got a chance at West Virginia and UNC Charlotte to call ball plays, really put that into practice and became the birth of what we do now, with the Big O system, is to be a traditional offense. We have guardrails where there are things we're not going to be able to do well, and that's on purpose because we've only got so much time to be great at something. And then we attack, defense very systematically, based on the triangle that we define, all traced back to the roots of numbers and angles and graphs that I learned in 1991 from, Paul Johnson.
Yeah. Now, I mean, with that, like, I'm just slightly curious, like, from Paul Johnson to Mike Seawalk to Troy Calhoun, did how different was the, uh, uh, like, obviously the philosophy of the offense is the same, the core plays are the same, but were there any, like, could you see any personality differences or like practice philosophy differences between the three, and how they approached maybe things? Because obviously each is their, if you look at just like Navy and Air Force's differences over the past 10 years, like there are certain plays that one likes to run over the other. Was there any like philosophical or personality differences that bled into their forms of offense?
I think so, and it was actually a moment in time, when we left Ohio University in 1999, and we were 100% flex bone. Right, Mike Seawalk left halfway through, and Troy Calhoun became the OC and continued with the flex bone, the stuff that, of course, he was trained up by from those guys at Air Force. Troy played quarterback at Air Force. Um, but when we got the Wake Forest job, it was said in no uncertain terms that we're not going to run that in the ACC here at Wake Forest. And so Troy Calhoun was tasked with having to take the flex bone and put it into 11 personnel gun. And I'm not saying by any stretch that Troy invented orbit motion that became what you see now with putting defenders in conflict in the run game with give, keep, and pitch stuff. But it's the first time my young butt had ever seen it, and we ended up leading the ACC in rushing the first 2 years at Wake Forest. Just being an 11 personnel orbit team, making that backside end, see something run by him. So um, there was a tremendous difference between, there was no difference between Mike, Paul, and Troy prior to that move to Wake. And then I saw by necessity and demand a very smart man in Troy Calhoun take those things and put it into more traditional offense that, of course, everything I've ever taught has been stolen from.
Well, yeah, you've seen him evolve just at Air Force. You'll see periods of
That's I
various
agree with
things.
you, Nick. His offenses look different than Army and Navy
Yeah.
because I think that experience he had those years he was at Wake Forest, and then a lot of people don't know this. Troy left Wake Forest and became the offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos for a couple years. Okay, so he was an NFL coordinator before he got the head job at Air Force. His dream school, his alma mater. I think he sees himself as a guy like Fisher to Barry, and that I'm happy with this job. I love these kids, and I'm going to stay here forever. He's certainly had opportunities to leave over the last decade, but has personally chosen not to. They don't have any fact on that. I'm just throwing that out there as a wild guess, knowing how successful he's been. But with his time at Wake Forest, in terms of being forced by an athletic director to say, "Hey, you're not running that here in the ACC. I want to recruit kids and get fans and get TV dollars." Right or wrong, that was the message. And then his 2 years as an NFL offensive coordinator, I think Troy's smart enough to take a lot of those things he learned from those experiences and apply it to an Air Force team that does look a lot different the Navy and Army. Jeff and Kenny Niamat, they never broke away from that tree. And I think you're seeing some change in that now right? With Kenny Niemot not being at Navy anymore, and even in Jeff. I mean, the Army Navy game this year, Coach Monken was in, empty 4x1 a few snaps. I'm like, holy smokes, look at this. So, I think there's a lot of evolution going on with a lot of that, but at the core, I think all of those men mentioned are cut from the same cloth in terms of, understanding the game from a principle of numbers and angles and graphs that you have to start with if you're a triple option football team.
Well, yeah, and to mention that, like, because I remember it's like a year or two ago, I was watching an Air Force game, and they were in a lot more. It might have been 3 years ago. They were in a lot of I at the time for some, and they were in a lot of wide zone, and they were talking about how his time at Denver and yeah, I mean, people, if you've watched Air Force over the years, they've been in gun, they've been under center, they've been in the I. I mean, yes, they still are primarily a quote unquote flex bone team, but I mean, they'll run a lot of stuff that the other ones won't. Now going. Let's get back to Jim Grobe real quick. I mean, obviously, Coach Grobe was at Ohio University, um, kind of left it in a good place, and
Oh,
then Wake Forest and make Wake. Let's be honest, Wake is probably one of the most difficult jobs in the ACC, like by far, and made it competitive. Won quite a few games there, and then retired, and then took the Baylor job temporarily just to kind of help get through a bad situation. What was kind of the experience, and what were you able to take from him? Because obviously, you said you spent a lot of time with him, and I think he's probably one of the more respected coaches that's coached college football. What were you able to kind of pull from your time with him, not just schematically, but just as a coach in general?
well, Groby was the guy that didn't ever call a play his entire time. Groby's gift was people. Um, he always hired the right person. Every time we lost a great one, he replaced him with another great one. Every time. He never missed on that. And then from a recruiting standpoint, in terms of people, he'd tell you can bring in a bad player, but don't bring in a bad kid. If you bring in a bad kid, I'm going to fire you. If you bring in a bad player, that's okay. We all signed off on him. Sometimes we miss, but we're still going to love on that kid. It was our fault. We're not going to run him out of the program. He was just a amazing people person. And I know that sounds underrated to a lot of folks, but especially in today's world when you literally can't build a relationship in college football anymore with the NIL and transfer portal issues going on. Groby was the best at it. A lot of people don't know, but prior to his arrival at Ohio University, there were 30 straight years of losing football records. And in his third season, went 8-3. Prior to Wake Forest, 101, I think, years of college football seasons at Wake Forest, they were in 4 bowl games. In my 7 years there, Groby was there like 13, but in my 7 years there, we went to 5. His ability to put the right people in the room together, getting all of those people, there was never if we scored, 10 points and won 10-7, the defense never looked down their nose. If we had to win a game 44-43, the offense never looked down their nose. Kids were always together. He just got a bunch of really talented people in the same room, all pull on the same end of the rope. And I know that sounds, simple, but there's a gift to it. And he was the best at it without question. He never missed on a personnel hire, and we rarely missed as coaches on kids. I still remember being at Wake Forest, and Aaron Curry was not a highly recruited football prospect. He was the 4th pick in the draft, and Riley Skinner, who was one of my quarterbacks, he had one other offer. It was Samford, not Stanford, Samford. And he comes in and as a redshirt freshman leads us to an ACC championship in a bowl game. Kid named John Abadi, who was the defensive player of the year on our championship team in 2006. I hate to say it, Nick, but his other offer was Ohio University. The majority of the kids we took at Wake Forest did not have other ACC offers, but they were the right kids and not only the right kid at that position, but they fit in with the kid next to them, and those two kids fit in with the defensive coordinator, and those, it just all fit. And Groby had an elite gift for that. The greatest human being that I've met in the game, and I choose my words very carefully. I mean that with all my heart. He's a special man.
Now, would part of that also be just because I mean you do have a lot different academic requirements at Wake Forest than you do at a lot of
That's
universities?
Nick. That's a little bit of that's a half truth.
Okay.
Wake was really good with us. They gave us what they called exemptions. Like you can have so many per year, and our first couple years, the athletic department said, "Hey, listen, you can bring a kid in here to Wake with bad grades. He's just got to be a kid that can survive. I don't want kids flunking out. And if he has, maybe some bad grades, he can't be a bad character kid." So we took some kids out of some schools and out of some programs with very suspect academic backgrounds. I mean, the majority of our starters, you would not have thought, coming from the programs and looking at their high school transcripts, that on paper that they were going to be able to make it. But again, when coach did a home visit and he saw two parents in the home, and he recognized that maybe the kid just had a poor freshman year, he recognized maybe that the kid was taking honors classes in a school where he didn't need to. But you look at the transcript, and the kid never missed school. The coaches love him. The English teacher praises about him. That kid was an exempt at Wake Forest. We just didn't look at the piece of paper that said, okay, he's a 2.7 and a 19 on the test, he can't get in. No, we took that kid, and those kids won for us. So I do think that, yes, maybe we didn't have the depth that the other teams had, and by the grace of God, those kids stayed healthy. Because if we lost a kid like John Abadi, it was very, very difficult to replace him. Those kind of things. But we were given a pretty long leash based upon Groby's ability to find the right kid, no matter what his test score might be.
Okay. I've always wondered about that. Like, I mean, you obviously get some exemptions, but that's always an interesting.
It's different at every school too. Duke may not, Northwestern may, Notre Dame may or may not, Vanderbilt, I'm not. It's really up to the athletic department how much they want to build a football program, because you just simply can't compete for that college dollar with players that aren't as good. It's impossible in our sport. So you had to butt heads and take the kid that could have gone to Florida State, but maybe just academically he was on the line, and they could not find another kid that was equal to. And so we took the other one and ended up winning with them.
Okay. Now, obviously, after being at Wake, you became an offense coordinator, and you've slowly developed your Big O system into kind of what it is today. And I'll put the link down below for the website. But like, what I mean, kind of just people who may not have seen any of your stuff or are familiar with the Big O system, what in general is, and you've kind of mentioned a little bit already, what
Yeah.
is the Big O system?
Well, like, again, it's simply something that started, uh, from learning from very smart people, from trying things out and failing and going, no, we got to do it this way, and then having success, and then thinning that success down to what really is a traditional offense, but it is a system. There's guardrails you can't go past. It limits the amount of calls on your call sheet, but it allows you to get more efficient in practice, in your work week, and certainly helps kids to execute on Friday nights. When we got let go at Charlotte in 2017, I still remember it was January 1 of 2018. I'm sitting there watching football games, and I'm thinking, man, I don't think I'm getting back in this. I'm probably going to take this scouting job, but how do I stay connected? Because it's very hard for ball coaches to turn it off, as you know, always thinking scheme and that. So I thought, you know what? We did some really good things with the freshman team at Charlotte. We started the program at Charlotte, and in 2013, we played with 20 offensive scholarship kids on offense. We played with, another 30 walk-ons on offense, and all those kids in the fall of 2013 were freshmen or redshirt freshmen. I mean, that school had only seen 2 years of recruiting. So as we approached the first game, August of 2013, we had, a year of practice and 2 years of recruiting. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way these kids are going to be able to take the playbook we used at West Virginia and execute. We're asking them to do too many things. So, we built a system from the things we learned at Wake and West Virginia and Ohio University and all those people. We put guardrails on it like the midline guys do and the air raid guys do, and said, okay, this is who we are and this is what we're going to do. And we were very successful on offense. We finished in 2013 in FCS football, the 25th best team in the country in terms of total yards and points. And then in 2014, we were number 10 and 11 in those two categories, scoring 40 some odd points and just over 500 yards a game. So feel very strongly about it. It's something that I never got into to make money. It was simply something I knew could help high school guys because they too play with oftentimes, I don't want to say inferior talent, but at Charlotte at the time, they were freshmen and we were playing James Madison and we were playing Coastal Carolina. These were still FCS schools. And, clearly they didn't offer any of the kids on our team. So on paper, they were inferior, but they didn't play like it on Saturday afternoons. We scored a lot of points. So just wanted to put that into a book, wanted to share it with high school guys. And, 4 or 5 years later, we now have 180 high school staffs representing 39 states in the country. We've got a semi-pro team in Poland that has purchased the system. The thing that I like best about it is, there are 20 to 30 high school staffs of those 180 who are genuinely all in, and we talk often on the phone. We do Zoom calls. We text, we call. I'm now helping different high schools in the fall attack defensive fronts, come up with game plans, help, with practice plans and organization, things like that. And it makes me feel like I'm a graduate assistant now for 20 or 30 high school teams across the country that genuinely use me as a resource all year round. And that's the fun part for me, is that I get to continue to talk football. I get to continue to be part of helping others, which, by the way, is what the big O stands for. It's not offense. We have a core value system of team, time, and truth that lead to putting other people first. The O is for others first, and try to live my life that way and try to represent this mini company and this playbook that way by helping as many other people out there who want to get a little bit better at organizing an offense with the creative mind that could go off the rails, but we need to hone it in so the Jimmies and Joes can execute. It's kind of a long-winded, rambling response to a question, but I hope that defines what we're trying to do here.
No, it does. And like I said, allows people to get perspective. And like I said, your website's very detailed. I know he's got various things on CoachTube as well. I mean, this is just my general curiosity. Are you ever going to get into obviously you're helping a bunch of schools right now. Are you ever going to go back to college or get in? With you being in North Carolina, a good football state, are you ever going to coach high school football in the great state of North Carolina, or do you just play, or is your long-term passion helping as many staffs as possible?
Well, I think like any other man, my long-term passion is to provide for my family and protect my wife. I've been married for 29 years. I have 4 children. I have a 27-year-old, a 23-year-old, a 22-year-old, and we were foster parents for years. I highly encourage that to anybody listening. Help out your local kids in your county and your state. We had a lot of kids come and go, but we ended up adopting one of them just out of his need. We didn't get into it to adopt. It just ended up that way. So I also now have a 10-year-old son. So my long-term goal and passion is just to provide for those people. I got out of coaching thinking I was going to get back in. I needed to take a break. I was offered an opportunity in scouting. I got enamored with the lifestyle after 30 years of grinding and thought, let me try this. It pays well enough to support my family. And I ended up falling in love with it, Nick. I'm not going to lie to you. I have no interest in going back. However, every year I have been offered an opportunity and I have listened and I always will. And if the right one comes along, I definitely do it for, if it's going to help me to provide for my wife and 4 kids, and protect what we have, for them. I think that's what every man's goal on the face of this earth should be, right? So the Big O system has just been a blessing from God, because in this period of not having the daily relational opportunities with players and assistant coaches, it's allowed me to kind of fill that void. God's been he's really blessed what we've done, and it's allowed me to protect and provide for my family, along with the full-time job, and I get to be home now and take care of the 10-year-old, right? I never did that with the first 3. And now I'm going to football games on the weekends and going to baseball practice, and I'm picking him up from school every day at 2:45, and all that fun stuff. So it's I'll never say never. I think you always have to leave your options open, always, when you're in a place where you've been called to provide. But I can promise you, Nick, I'm not looking. I'm very blessed and enjoying my lifestyle right now, brother.
And my last question for you with that is you've obviously coached at quite a few different places. I mean, Hawaii is a whole different spectrum. Um, OU is its own life of its own, and literally in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, but it's probably one of the most beautiful campuses you will ever be.
Amen. College football players, be a Bobcat. It's great.
Oh, the cherry blossom trees throughout the year, just beautiful.
Oh, yes.
Wake Forest is obviously a great university as well. Charlotte, West Virginia. Like, kind of looking back on it, like, is there anything like obviously you're enjoying your time with your family and what you do and kind of being all that, but is there anything you miss, or is there any like going like some people like have memories of going to certain places and coaching at certain venues that are just different and are a good time? Is there anything you kind of miss from that you're no longer doing?
Well, the biggest thing from the football side I miss is the quarterbacks, my position group. Like, we had very good relationships over the years. I mean, I got people I've benched and backups that I still talk to, right? And so I really miss going into a room every day for a position meeting from 2 to 3 o'clock or whatever it is, and just messing with them kids, right? Getting personal with them and laughing, and whose turn is it to pick the music in the background today, and some country kids playing the music and some kid from Atlanta's laughing at them. And I really miss those relationships. I miss the home visits and the recruiting of my scouting job now. I identify players, I evaluate players, I write up players, and then I package them and sell that information to the Clemsons and North Carolinas of the world. But I don't recruit the kid, right? So I miss the relationship of calling him each week, of going to see his high school coach, going to see him at a basketball game, or doing a home visit. I really miss that. But quite frankly, the things I miss the most are the pepperoni rolls in Morgantown, West Virginia, best on the planet. I miss Court Street in Athens, Ohio. There's 2 or 3 bars and restaurants that are phenomenal. I met my wife in the Junction on Court Street back in 1992 and tricked her into thinking I was a doctor. Wake Forest, the city of Winston-Salem is just so pretty, and the fans there are phenomenal. I really miss in at Wake Forest, just the kindness of the people, win or lose, how much they appreciated you being there at the university. You know, there's just, I'm learned how to surf in Hawaii at age 22. I mean, come on, those are the things when you look back you miss the most. And at the same time, just grateful that you had an opportunity to be in those cultures, to be around those different kinds of people, to pick up their hometown thing and enjoy it. And each place a little different, but all special for sure.
Okay. Well, coaches, you can give Coach a follow on Twitter. That'll be in the bio. Check out the Big O system. That's also the link will be in the bio. You can also type that in the Coach Tube. I know that for a fact. Like, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz. Check out our sponsor, Coachpad. I know I'm probably forgetting something. I always forget something at this end spiel, but oh well. And otherwise, that's in our episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.
Nick, I appreciate you, man. I'm grateful for what you do for football, and certainly happy to have an opportunity to speak to people today. Thank you.
Thank you.